Welcome to this week's episode of Mixed Media Monday. I had planned to do this page as a page in my art journal, but then when I decided that I wanted to use the tabs from a Scrabble game as my lettering for my title, I decided that I'm going to change things up a bit and do something that is three-dimensional, or that has three-dimensional objects on it, and I was going to do it on a canvas. Now, what I'm starting off here is just a prepared canvas from Michaels. It's quite a large one, but I'm not sure what the measurements are on it. And this is wrapping paper. It's called luxury wrapping paper. I'm pretty sure it's one of those fancy rolls that would have come from something like Chapters or something, some kind of boutique type of gift wrapping zone of a store or something like that. But it's textured a little bit like wallpaper, and it's quite it has a lot of absorption to it, and I just love that birch bark graphic on there. I can't get enough of that. I've been looking at it for a long time. Now I have a giant roll of it, and I am very, very happy about that. So as you can see, I just ripped up the wrapping paper and now I'm adding it to the page, and this is just the beginning of the background, so it's my first layer. It's going to get covered up, but I'm going to put some more on, and then you're still going to be able to see everything through at the end of the project. So on the edges, I'm going to lay down some matte medium, and I'm going to smooth them down as well so that the pieces of paper curve around the edges of the canvas. Now, this canvas is one that if you've been watching my videos from the beginning, you'll know that my grandmother is a huge inspiration to me, and this is one of those ones that is done in thought of her again. I'm using pages from her dictionary. I'm going to use a picture of a mime doll that is from one of her doll magazines, and so on. And the reason that I'm thinking about her in January is because in January we lost both her sister, her next sister, who's the next one younger than her, and we also lost her significant other, the man who I've known basically as my grandfather for the past 20 odd years. So in losing both of those, I've been thinking about her quite a lot, and so this title of this one is going to be I Know You Are There. And that's because originally I had been pulling all kinds of things out of my stashes, and I'd been making piles of what I was going to do for this art journal page for this week's Mixed Media Monday, and I had thought, you know what, I'm going to retry the Pick a Stick challenge from January, and I'm going to put some planning into it and some thought into it. And so I had laid out a whole bunch of stuff, and as I laid that stuff out excuse me, life just kept happening, and slowly I would put one thing away, and I got to the point where it was no longer recognizable as a Pick a Stick challenge. I had removed things like the gears and stuff like that because they just weren't fitting in, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to deal with this emotional stuff that I'm dealing with rather than trying to force something else out of me. And so that's what I ended up doing. So once I have the collage elements on here, I decide that I'm going to pull some neocolor 2 color into it. Now, the color for this whole background comes from those bells that are sitting there, and they have a lot of that kind of burnished gold in there, and they've got some the metal kind of has this red or the yellow shine and an orange to it, and it's got some green in there, it's got some blue in there, it's got some tarnished black in there, and so I'm pulling all that into the background. And so the first neocolor 2 I scribbled down there was gold. The second one I scribbled down is orange, and then vermilion. So I'm starting with the lightest color first to activate them, and that's going to be the orange. Then I'll activate the gold, and then I'll activate the vermilion. Now, I'm really happy with the color that came out on this because it's exactly going to match the color and tones on the bell. And so that makes me really, really happy. The one thing that ended up happening is that I took the shine away from anything I put on that was glossy because I use matte medium instead of a gloss medium. And I'm okay with that because I was mostly going for that olivey goldy kind of color, and so that still does happen. I still do get that. I still get that nice color combination in there, so I'm not too distressed about that. But if you wanted to keep the shiny gold in there, you would not use a matte medium over the top of it. Now this project required a lot of heat setting, and so once this is all activated, I didn't want to dab off color. I didn't want a whole lot of running. I did do a little bit of letting the color run just so that I could move it a little bit so it would dry faster. But I did a lot of drying with my heat gun because I wanted to keep those watercolor splotchy kind of spaces in there. So you may be asking, where does that crazy orange color come from? And it comes from a couple rust patches on those bells. I'm not sure you can see them right now. You will be able to see them towards the end. But yeah, so I just keep adding the color and drawing it and adding some more color in there. Now, so I was talking about the title and where that came from. While I was going through the Pick a Stick challenge, the final straw to do it again, to do it a second time. The final straw for me came when I went to look for lyrics, and that was the last thing. I'd picked everything for all the prompts, and it all was cohesive and nice together. And then I went through, and number 3 for that, for January's challenge, was to use the lyric, add a lyric from a song. So I ended up searching for lyrics, and what I ended up with was a hymn similar to a hymn, and it's written by Richard and Linda, Richard Marks and Linda Thompson, called To Where You Are. And that, the verse to that, the lyrics to that just kind of struck a chord, and I was like, you know what, I got to give up on trying to do this project, and I have to go back to dealing with my sadness about loss, and so that's where I went with this. So the color that I just added there was the Payne's Gray, and Payne's Gray has kind of a bluish tint to it, and I needed that bluish tint in order to match the dark black kind of shadowy color that is on the bells. It's not really a black, it's not really a green, it's more of a blue, but it's also got green in it. So this Payne's Gray combined with the gold really allowed for the right color combination to come out along the edges. Then I go in and I added in some more yellow and darken things up and brighten things up and so on. It's kind of hilarious how the neocolor 2 that has the label of orange on it is more of a yellow than an orange. You know, and then the vermilion, which I would typically think of as a red, is quite orange. That's the orange that you can see there. So here we go. This is up close. It's overexposed because I had my spotlight on still. Sorry about that. But like you can see all the gold and green and yellow and orange in there, and it all kind of works out. So this is the doll image from my grandmother's magazine. I don't know. I think that the doll pictures and dolls in general are a really touch and go kind of subject for many people. I have heard so many people, especially in my family, say that that's creepy. And, you know, every time that a doll image comes up anywhere, they say, oh, that's creepy. And so I'm kind of curious about that. I don't find a lot of dolls creepy unless they're intended to be creepy. I find a lot of their faces to be sweet little baby faces and so on. So I guess that's a good thing since I have so many of them now. Since I inherited so many dolls, I don't actually find them creepy. So these doilies I just pulled from a stash. They're probably something from the dollar store or something. And then I'm adding in the bells. Now, the bells came from a calendar, my calendar from last year. I really like upcycling my calendars, if you haven't noticed yet. This calendar was called The Present Moment, Embracing the Fullness of Life. And it was printed by Sounds True, Many Voices, One Journey. So to find these kinds of images and stuff, you could probably look at soundstrue.com and so on if you're really interested. or in Amber Lotus. They have the actual images, I would think. But so I cut out those images. I do alter them a little bit. It is by them. And then I added the doll in here. She's just kind of she's got a tear coming out of her eye, and she's kind of a little bit like a mime. And she's white-faced and sorrowful and so on. So I thought that she was fitting for a piece about loss. And so why did I add the bells in there? And the bells were kind of dictating the whole piece, you know, and because they have such strong colors in them and such a strong palette in them. And so it comes down to, okay, why would I pick the bells if they're going to choose basically everything that goes on this page for me? And the reason for that is because on the bells page there was a quote, and it was talking about the quote was, one of the greatest gifts that is present in every moment is the flow of your breath. Your breath is the mover, you are the dancer. And that quote is by Shiva Ray. And something just spoke to me about that, but I didn't really want to put the quote on there. I just wanted the bells. And it made me think of the bells ringing. And so there's 2 bells ahead of her, and that's because we've had 2 recent losses, and there's 1 bell behind her, and that is the loss of my grandmother, which is an older loss. It was almost 2 years ago now, just over a year and a half ago. So that is why I have the 3 bells on there. That kind of made me think of the church bells and calling everyone to say goodbye and so on. I do end up just loving the palette that came out of that from the use of the bells. I often do that. I'll grab a picture, and the picture will dictate to me what kinds of color scheme I'm going to use for the project. And it really helps me to have like a flawless choosing of color. It's all kind of intuitive, but at the same time, if you can't find it in a picture somewhere, then the color combination may not go together. And so I don't really go through and pick a lot of my own color combinations. When I do that, I end up with more of a rainbow kind of look to things. And in this kind of situation, I do still have the rainbow bright colors all over the, puked up all over the page. But at the same time, it all is cohesive because of the element of the bells. And so if you can find colors together in nature, then you can create a page that the colors will go together. So that is kind of how I base my color choices. So I ended up putting the doilies on, and one on top to break up the bottom layer there. I added some more wrapping paper at the bottom there, and I added some more text paper at the bottom just to create the illusion that she wasn't standing in the middle of the page. It kind of created broke up that line work there. And now all the orange or all the vermilion that I had on the page was that one mohawk type thing coming out the top of her head. And so I figured that I needed to add some more of that bright orangey vermilion color in there somewhere. And then I created just a visual triangle just to balance the whole canvas out. And then once again, I've added some more of the Payne's Gray in order to create a little bit more balance in there. And I do just keep layering and layering and layering until I'm content with where I end up being. So here I go back to gold, and I wanted a little bit more control of the gold, and so I put it on, I got a wet brush, and I put it straight on from the brush onto the crayon, and then pulled it off a little bit because I did want more of that gold in the top portion there. And that gold kind of helped the orange blend in with things, and it kind of helped the yellows blend in with things and all of that. Once that's nice and dry, I will be able to add the bells. Now, if I had just laid down the neocolor 2s and then tried to put something on with the matte gel, that wouldn't be a very good plan. And the reason for that is that the neocolor 2s, because they're water-based, will continue to move. And so what I do is I heat set them, and heat setting them makes it so that I can put matte medium over the top, and they don't move unless I scrub the page. If I were to go and put some pressure on it and scrub the page, then yes, those colors would move. But otherwise, they stay right where they are after they've been heat set. So when I'm putting on magazine pages, because they are kind of flimsy, it's kind of a magazine print type thing, so you do have to work with your paper, you do have to work with your page. I'm using a wet medium because I like how it all comes together at the end. And I like how it's a little bit more permanent that way. So I work from the center of the object or the top of the object, and I just kind of keep going over and over and over it until all of the bubbles are gone and until it is going where I want it to go. Now I didn't think this through. I had to pull that one leaf back up so I could slide the one that goes underneath it actually underneath it. Now these, you know, it's really strange to me how you can cut something apart but it never goes back together the same way that it was cut apart. I'm not sure why that is, but I fiddled with it a little bit and it did not want to go back how it was, so I just said, oh well, whatever, we'll just, however I glue it down, it's how it will stay. And that's what I ended up doing, is just putting it on however it would stay. So this is all golden matte medium. That's usually what I use. And now I'm going to use the golden heavy gel, and I'm going to glue on the letters. So the poem, or the verse that caught my attention, the song is called To Where You Are, and I will write the verse down in the corner afterwards. I just want to talk about how I'm positioning these. So when I'm positioning them, I didn't want them to slip around too much, so I didn't put too much of the heavy gel on them, or heavy matte medium on them. And so I just kind of put a little bit on and then positioned it and glued it down, and then went around the edges and pulled out anything that pushed out from underneath it, and then made sure they were nicely aligned before they dried 100%. Now I wanted to write on here, I know you are there, but I didn't have the letters in the Scrabble game for the word no. And so I wrote it on with a pencil, and I had the intention of going over it with my Stabilo All, which is a common use for me, but I decided to reach for this calligraphy pen instead. And as I'm doing this, and as I'm thickening up the line work and such, I realized that this isn't just any calligraphy pen, it's something called an elegant writer. And you know, usually I would play in my art journal, not on a canvas. Because a canvas is out for display, I wouldn't normally be tempted to play on a canvas, but I ended up playing on this canvas, and it was just simply because I had the implement in my hand. And so I went through and I thickened up the lines, and I made it this beautiful word, I know. And then, I don't know what came over me. I had to grab my water barrel brush and activate the elegant writer. And why not? You know, everyone else is doing it. Yeah, it turns into this gigantic, nasty mess of messes, and I end up ruining the word I know, or the word no. So the other problem that I had here is that it's covered in matte medium, like a layer of matte medium to keep everything down. And then on top of the matte medium is the watercolor crayon. So what I have there is two resistant bases for this to sit on, and that's why it's just beading up instead of spreading out like I wanted it to. It's just going to bead up and make a big sloppy puddly mess. And I could have gone in and wiped it all off with a wet wipe or something, because I have that bases underneath, but I didn't. I just left that mess under there. And I let it dry like that, thinking I would go back in with some kind of hard line something or other later on. So then, in order to continue on the madness, I continued on the madness and put it underneath the lines, or the words here, under all the blocks. And then I continue on and use it for the shadow for all the bells. So it kind of turns into this, you know, instead of using the hard line of a black pen, I ended up using this one because I could activate it with water and make it a less harsh line. And if you see there, I'm not being incredibly precise, and that is because I'm just going to activate it and move it wherever I want it to be. So then I'll just grab that, or oh, I have to do all three of the bells, that's right too. And then after that, I just take that water barrel and away we go. I've got shadow on everything. Now this doesn't come out as a perfect shadow, but it definitely adds another element of layering. It adds more of a look to it. It adds more depth to the overall of the picture. And so even though I'm not 100% certain that I should have played on a canvas, I am very, very happy with the result of that play. I didn't record it, but afterwards I went around and smoothed out those solid lines there because I wanted them to be shadowy and not a solid line. Oh, I did do it on camera. There you go. So there I'm just going around and easing the solid lines so that they're nice and smooth and drawn out and they float away from the object. So the next thing that I'm going to do is write the verse on here, and what it ends up saying is, who can say for certain, maybe you're still here, I feel you all around me, your memory so clear. I know you are there, a breath away, not far, to where you are. And I just kind of took my time and drew in the words here and kind of let the thought of the losses that we've recently had, I let that kind of drift away as I was adding it in here, and decided I was good. I was dealing with this, and that was a good thing. For the past couple days, I've had like zero creative mojo, so this was very beneficial for me to go through with the process of this canvas because it allowed me to continue on and create something, and it made me feel good. So I'll just go through, and this pen is the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. It's a size S. I wanted it to be a very fine point pen. And then I just kind of wrote in all kinds of different typesets of what the verse was. The reason that I'm using the Pitt pen is because it won't move. It is a permanent archival pen. My page is nice and dry, so it's not going to ruin the nib. And then I'm just going to go over it and write in the whole thing there. Now, I had gotten to the point where this was basically, I felt like this was done. And I think that that's because I have gotten into the trend of doing 99% of my creativity in an art journal. And the reason that I do them in an art journal is so that I don't have a storage problem. There's only so much wall space in my house, and there's only so much wall space in my friends and family's house. And so this was, I normally would do this kind of thing in an art journal. And so as I was going through this, I was like, okay, well, I feel finished now. But then I realized, hey, no, this is going to go on a wall. I can do as much embellishment and I can be as thick as I want to be. And because it's going on the wall, I do not have to worry about keeping all of my elements flat. You can put fat elements into a book, but it limits how many elements you can put into the book because if you're not careful, you won't be able to close your book or you won't have space on your shelf for the book. And so this is my alternative. I took advantage of the fact that it will not be closed up, it'll be on a wall, and therefore I could be as 3D as I wanted to be. Now, as to how I come up with all these different typesets or fonts, I don't know. I just kind of went with the flow and added this stuff in there. The next thing that I did is I wanted to add more elements in this black Pitt pen. And so I decided that because her hat was black, I could add those elements into her black hat. Kind of a tone-on-tone effect. And I took a picture of her face because I wanted to remember what her face looked like before I did doodling and drawing and so forth, and what it looked like afterwards. And so here she is. I'm drawing into her hat, and I couldn't decide what pattern, so I stopped thinking about it. And I ended up with this leaf pattern that ends up looking kind of wavy and leafy and all kinds of wonderful. And so I'm happy with how that turns out. I think I do skip through the Zentangling portion of this. I think I just kind of show you how I start, and then I'll show you, you'll see it towards the end of how it turns out. So I'm just putting in the wave patterns, and then after that I'll put in the S patterns along the leaf edges, and after that I will skip through to the end of this portion. I'm not sure what this pattern is called. I'm not an official Zentangler, although I do thoroughly enjoy doing Zentangle on my projects. There we go. That's the finished look to the hat. So then I continue on, and I drew in the lines of her neck, and I should have just left it like that, but now she's got this chin strap. And then I decided I was going to do her eyes, and that made her eyes very dark. And then my worst mistake ever comes when I try to emphasize her eyelashes. And when I do that, I ended up with this hot mess that was just, you know, I've made her eyes all random and crazy. Now I'm adding in eyelashes, and she just looks like, you know, your dolls when you're 3 years old and you color all over their faces. That's what this looked like to me. And I thought, oh man, now I'm gonna have to put some gesso over top of it, and I'm going to have to totally recreate her face. It's not gonna look anything like that. Good thing I took a picture before I started. So I start gessoing her face with clear gesso, and I realize, hey, this Pitt ink, because it's not heat set, the Pitt pen is coming off with the gesso. So I go through and I scour away with the gesso, and I rub it all off, and her face gets nice and clean. I just kind of apply it on there and rub it off, apply it on and rub it off, and put it on with the brush, and I'm just kind of washing her face. And that made me so incredibly happy that I hadn't ruined my whole project, that I just couldn't believe it. So then I go and I decide, okay, I'm going to heat set that so that her face doesn't move anymore. And after I heat set it, I realize, oh, I should have taken the chin strap off. But because it's heat set, it will no longer come off with the gesso. So I give up. My next step is to grab the silver, what are they called? Liquid pearls from Ranger. This is a dimensional pearlescent paint, and it shines in silver. And the reason I chose silver is because the shine on the golden bells shines silver. Because of the tints of blue, because of the tints of green, it shines this silvery kind of color. And I did want to go around and emphasize her ruffles, and this was the perfect way to do that. So I do that. I give her pom-pom. I turn that silver. I do the edge of her hat in silver, so everything is cohesive. And then I got to thinking, oh, where else can I put this? So the bells get it all along the one side there. And after that, her pom-poms on her shirt will get it. And the bells into tie or in all along that one edge will get it. Anything that's exposed to the light, I allow it to shine silver. And I had trouble, because I had zoomed in so much and my desk space is only so large, I had trouble trying to figure out how to be able to show you what I was doing. But also, I needed to manipulate the painting in such a fashion that I didn't sit my hand in the dimensional paint that I had just placed. So I had to kind of play with it a little bit to get it to go where I wanted it to go. So then I thought, you know what, I will put that here. And I love this. This is one of my favorite features of this canvas. And you know, it goes on this nice, beautiful, shiny silver, but as it dried, it picked up the pigment from the Elegant Writer, and so it kind of shines this black blue kind of silvery color, and it's just fabulous. The next thing I did is, after my decision of going to three-dimensional, I went through my stash of flowers. This flower, the big flower, I think is a prima flower. I'm not sure where I got the leaves. They're probably a prima leaf as well. The brown flowers are from Petaloo. The colored flowers are from Prima, and the teeny tiny roses are from Kaisercraft. Now, you can get these tiny roses or something like that from the dollar store, and they always have this little wire, green wire stick on them. And I don't cut that stick off. I twirl it around so it adds that extra dimension once again, and that little bit of pop of color of green in there, and makes it a little bit more true to form of how vegetation is, or even if you have a flower arrangement, there's all kinds of different textures and fine textures and heavy textures and all that kind of stuff in there, and that's what I was going for. So I'm just gluing absolutely everything on there with the heavy matte gel, heavy matte medium, and once I'm done that, I'm just going to trim up the edges with the silver liquid pearls. Now, I also put a patch of flowers and leaves and stuff up in the top left-hand corner of the canvas, but when I went to film that, my camera would not adjust and it stayed fuzzy, so I just gave up on it. And then I go through, put some edges on in the silver, and then I dropped some little drips on there, like dewdrops here and there. There's that top corner. You can see that. And I just added 3 little drips as though they're little bits of dew. And then I see that I hadn't filled in those, so I activated the Elegant Writer in there. And then I go around and add a little bit of shadow with the Elegant Writer just to make the flowers be a little bit more cohesive with the overall of the canvas so that they belong there. And then I do the bottom as well with that, just to make sure that everything is a cohesive layer in there. And because all the flowers and stuff are either paper or fabric, they are absorbing that black in there, and so it gives this tonal release. You know, it goes from a darker color to a lighter color, and it kind of just blends out the edges of things so that they're all nice and cohesive. So then I needed to bring the clown, back into play, and so I went through and added the Elegant Writer around where I had previously added the silver liquid pearls. And part of this was wondering if I would be able to get that same type of color that I have where it says the word no. And it didn't work because the liquid pearls by this time had already dried, so it didn't work for that purpose. But I like the 3-dimension that it gives. It makes those ruffles pop just that little bit more, and so I like the effect that I created here. And I did go around 2 or 3 times just to break up the solidity of that, because there's nothing solid in the frills when you have tulle, right? The fabric tulle. So then I feel like I'm all finished, and I will sign off my name, and that is where we go. So here's my hot mess, and now there we go, nice and shiny. Here are the bells a little bit closer, and my color inspiration. You can see the flecks of orange on the leaves, and there we go. Thank you so very much for watching this episode of Mixed Media Monday. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe and like it and share it and all those fabulous things. And I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching Lizzie's Workshop.